On November 15th, 1995, in the city of Brooklyn, two babies were born. Fraternal twins, one boy, one girl. The family, being too poor, had to put them up for adoption, so the kids would wait in the orphanage for a family to adopt them. But at first, no one did. As they got older, there was less interest in adopting them because everybody wanted a young baby. So the children would have to keep waiting. In the meantime, they would go to school. The girl did her own thing, but the boy had a passion for sports, and one sport in particular really stuck out to him. He loved basketball. Every chance he could, he would go to the park and play basketball. His sister was sort of like a coach, pushing him and motivating him to do better. One day, on the court, he met a boy his own age who also loved basketball. His name was Vic. Vic and he would play basketball all the time together. They became best friends. Then, when the twins were 14, their dream came true. In 2010, a family came to adopt them. They found out it was the same family who put them up for adoption. They told the kids that they didn't have enough money to take care of them, but had just recently gotten some money and searched desperately to find both of them. They then asked how they got the money out of nowhere. That is when the kids found out the most amazing thing out of all of this. Their cousin was Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo had just signed his contract with the New York Knicks in 2010, and he had heard about this dilemma. He donated some money to his aunt and uncle so they could have the kids and enough supplies to take care of them. Since neither kid really had a name yet, parents thought now would be a good time. The girl would be named Cece, the first C because of Carmelo, and the second one because she was a twin, so two C's. And the boy, who had only been called Freak by Vic because he didn't have a real name, would be named Nick. It was spelled K-N-I-C-K, after the New York Knicks because of the contract they gave Carmelo that gave the family the money to be able to have the children. So both Cece and Nick went to a public school that year. Nick continued to pursue his dream in basketball. Little did he know before all of this that it was in his blood. For the first time, he got to play for a real team other than his street pickup teams. Nick was able to see how great he really was. He seemed pretty good, and he started his freshman year at the age of 15. He didn't do too bad as he continued to start all throughout high school, and in his senior year, Nick was actually being scouted by some Division I teams, like Louisville, UCLA, and Georgetown, to name a few. Now, Nick loved his cousin Carmelo for all he did, and also as a player. He wore number 15, which was Melo's number in college at Syracuse, as well as his early years in the pros with Denver. Also, 15 was the age Nick played most of his games on a team for the first time. He wore the same accessories as his cousin, shooting sleeve on either arm and a headband, although he did not wear it in his high school and college career. Nick mimicked his cousin's shot and free throw, but there were some differences between the two when it came to basketball. For one, Melo is 6'8", Nick stopped growing at 6'4". Also, Carmelo is a pure small forward, Nick played the two guard and a little bit of point. Carmelo is an amazing shooter. He's also pretty strong and forceful. He could throw down a nice hard dunk. However, Nick is a good shooter, not as good as his cousin, but many people aren't. Nick is also smaller, making it hard to be as forceful. He could do basic dunks and dunk on the break, but what Nick lacked in strength and shooting in comparison to his cousin, he gained in quickness and ball handling. Nick was very fast, always a good runner, and when he wanted to, he could break down as a defender with his handles. Next, it was time for Nick to pick where he would go to college. He said as much as he wanted to follow Carmelo's footsteps, he was still his own person, and he had been stuck in Brooklyn his whole life. He wanted to get out and see a new scenery. So he decided to go to California and be a part of the UCLA Bruins. Nick did great in college, better than most players, and he was only a freshman. He led his team in scoring, and was by far the best player. He led his team to the championship. Then it was time for another big decision. Knick had to decide whether to stay in college or go pro after the 1 year. He had the talent and was pretty much guaranteed to be a first-round pick. His family talked it over for a while. His parents said how important education is, and that he needed something to fall back on if basketball didn't work. But everyone was okay after he decided to go pro. He now has Cece, his sister, as his manager, and Vic as his right-hand man. His next dream would be to one day play side by side with his cousin. Next is the NBA draft, and that'll open up the next chapter of this roller coaster ride of a life, starring Knick Anthony.